The winter sun was barely rising over the small town of Havenbrook when Margaret Blake opened her bakery. The sign above the door read Sweet Haven, and for many in town, that's exactly what it was, a haven. Every morning, the air filled with the scent of freshly baked bread, cinnamon rolls, and her famous honey butter croissants. People came not just for the pastries, but for Margaret herself, a woman whose warmth could make even the coldest morning feel gentle. Margaret had been running the bakery for 23 years. She'd started it with her husband, Tom, who had passed away nearly a decade earlier. Since then, she worked alone, pouring her heart into every loaf and pastry, keeping his dream alive. Her customers often said there was something special about her baking, something that couldn't be explained by ingredients alone. Margaret would smile and say, "It's love. That's what makes it rise." Yet, behind her soft smiles and kind eyes, there was a quiet loneliness. Her only son, Daniel, had moved to the city years ago. They spoke occasionally, but life and distance had a way of turning calls into messages, and messages into silence. She missed him deeply but never said it aloud. Instead, she baked. Every pie and cake was her way of sending love into a world that sometimes forgot to return it. One frosty December morning, as Margaret arranged trays of gingerbread cookies in the display, the bell over the door jingled. A young woman entered, bundled in a threadbare coat, her hair damp from the snow. She looked exhausted, her cheeks pale, her gloves torn. "Good morning," Margaret greeted warmly. "You're out early in this weather." The young woman smiled faintly. "I'm just passing through, ma'am. The bus dropped me off a few blocks away. I'm trying to get to Greenvale." "That's quite a distance from here," Margaret said. "Would you like something warm before you continue?" "Oh, I don't have," the girl started, but Margaret was already pouring hot cocoa into a mug. "Nonsense," she said, placing it on the counter along with a steaming cinnamon roll. "You look like you need this more than I do." Tears welled in the girl's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. I haven't eaten since yesterday." As she ate, Margaret learned her name, Lily. She had been trying to find work after leaving the city, where she'd been living in a shelter. She had no family left, no money to her name, and no one expecting her. "But I heard there's a place in Greenvale that helps people like me get back on their feet," Lily said. "I just have to make it there." Margaret's heart ached. She wanted to do more than feed the girl, but she knew she couldn't change the world, only small pieces of it. "You stay here for a bit," she said softly. "Warm up. I'll wrap some food for your journey." When Lily finished, she tried to refuse the bundle of sandwiches, cookies, and fruit Margaret handed her. "Please, I can't take all this." "You can," Margaret replied. "And you must. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone care." Lily's eyes glistened. "You're an angel," she said, clutching the parcel. "I'll never forget this." Margaret smiled. "Just promise me something, when you can, pass it on. That's all I ask." Lily nodded and hugged her tightly before stepping back into the cold. Margaret watched her walk down the snowy street until she disappeared from sight. She felt a small warmth in her chest, the kind that comes from doing something right, even if no one else sees it. Weeks passed, and the town prepared for Christmas. Lights adorned every street corner, and carolers sang in the square. Sweet Haven was busier than ever, yet Margaret's thoughts kept wandering to Lily. She hoped the girl had made it safely to Greenvale. She prayed she was warm and safe. On Christmas Eve, the bakery was bustling until dusk. When the last customer left, Margaret locked up, turned off the lights, and sat by the small Christmas tree she'd decorated with old ornaments. Beneath it lay a single gift, a framed photograph of her and Tom on their first day opening the bakery. Daniel had sent it last year. She picked it up, tracing the edges with her fingers, and whispered, "Merry Christmas, my love." Then came a soft knock at the door. Margaret frowned, the lights were off, and no one should have been out this late. She opened the door cautiously. A man stood outside, his coat dusted with snow, a paper-wrapped package in his hands. He looked about 30, with tired eyes and a gentle smile. "Mrs. Blake?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Can I help you?" He nodded. "Actually, I think you already did." She looked confused. "I'm sorry." The man chuckled softly. "You probably don't remember me. But a few weeks ago, you helped a young woman named Lily." Margaret's heart skipped. "Yes. Is she all right?" "She's more than all right," he said. "She made it to Greenvale. I work at the shelter there. She told us about you, the kind baker who gave her food and hope when she had none. She said she wanted to repay you somehow, but she had nothing. So she shared her story, and it inspired all of us." He handed her the package. "This is from the residents at our shelter. We all wanted to thank you. It's not much, but—" Margaret took it, her hands trembling. She unwrapped it slowly to reveal a quilt, handmade, patched with pieces of different fabrics. Each square was unique, embroidered with small messages: hope, warmth, gratitude, love. In the center, stitched in soft blue thread, were the words, "To the woman who reminded us that kindness can be home." Margaret pressed her hand over her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Tell them thank you. Tell Lily." "She knows," he said gently. "She wanted you to have this. She said it was her way of passing the kindness back to you." That night, Margaret sat by the fire, wrapped in the quilt. She hadn't felt that kind of warmth, that sense of belonging, in years. For the first time since Tom's passing, the silence of her home felt comforting, not empty. The next morning, Christmas Day, she hung the quilt in the bakery window with a small note: "Kindness always finds its way home." Over the next months, something remarkable happened. People began to visit Sweet Haven not just for pastries, but to share stories, of people they'd helped, strangers they'd fed, neighbors they'd forgiven. It became a quiet movement in Havenbrook, a wave of gentle acts that rippled outward. Margaret started keeping a small wooden box by the counter, labeled the kindness jar. Customers dropped notes inside, each describing something kind they'd done or received. Once a week, she'd read one aloud and posted on the wall. The wall soon filled with hundreds of notes, a living testament to goodness. One day, while arranging fresh bread in the display, Margaret noticed a man standing outside, staring at the quilt in the window. He looked oddly familiar. His hair was a bit longer now, his shoulders broader, but those eyes, she would have known them anywhere. "Daniel?" she whispered, stepping outside. He turned, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Mom!" She froze for a heartbeat, then ran to him, tears streaming down her face. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I should have come sooner." Margaret could barely speak. "You're here. That's all that matters." He pulled back slightly, wiping his eyes. "I didn't plan to come back. But, someone in the city told me about this bakery, about a woman who gave food to a stranger and inspired a town. They said her kindness started something beautiful. I didn't even realize they were talking about you until I saw the story online." She blinked. "Online?" He laughed. "Yeah. Someone posted about it. The shelter in Greenvale shared your story. It went viral, Mom. People everywhere are talking about it. They're calling it the gift that found its way home." Margaret's breath caught. "That's what?" Daniel nodded. "You gave kindness to a stranger, and it found its way back, to her, to me, to everyone. You have no idea how far your love traveled." Margaret smiled through her tears. "Oh, Tom would have loved this," she whispered. Daniel squeezed her hand. Then let's make sure his spirit lives on, together. From that day forward, Sweet Haven became more than a bakery. It became a symbol. Daniel helped his mother modernize it, setting up a small fund where customers could pay in advance for meals for those in need. People called it the Kindness Tab. Travelers, locals, even tourists who heard the story online came to add to it. Lily returned the following spring, looking healthy and happy. She was volunteering at the shelter and saving money to study social work. When she stepped into the bakery and saw Margaret again, they embraced like old friends. "I told you I'd find a way to give it back," Lily said softly. "You did, my dear," Margaret replied. "And look how far it went." Years later, when Margaret retired, Daniel took over the bakery. He kept the quilt framed on the wall, its colors slightly faded but still vibrant. Every morning, the scent of fresh bread filled the air, and the kindness jar remained by the counter, still collecting stories, still inspiring hearts. Visitors from far and wide came to see the bakery where a single act of kindness began a chain that never stopped. They'd look at the quilt, read the inscription, and feel something stir within them, the reminder that kindness doesn't end with one person. It travels, grows, and, in time, finds its way home. And though Margaret had grown old and no longer baked each day, she would often sit by the window, a cup of tea in hand, watching the snow fall. She'd smile at the sight of strangers holding the door open for one another, children sharing cookies, neighbors helping neighbors. She knew, deep down, that love, once given, never truly disappeared. It simply found new hands to carry it forward. The world, she thought, was full of gifts. But the greatest one she had ever received was the one she had unknowingly given, the gift that found its way home.